It's Tuesday, May 13th. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. And joining me to do just that is Scott Pianowski. Scott, what's going on, buddy?
I'm just thrilled to be here, my friend. It's been a minute since we've got a chance to talk. We got through free agency. We got through the draft. That walk up to the draft feels like it's longer and longer every year. And just shout out to you and Nate and C-Mac and all the guys who did such a great job. Football crew, Frank, Jory, everybody, Jason Fitz. The draft coverage was fantastic. But hey, that's all preamble, right? I mean, we're just trying to figure out where the chess pieces are. Now we know eventually at some point the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers will join 2025, and then we'll have everybody in a nice little box, and the players will start getting hurt and all that. But right now, I mean, we're not far away from you can draft your team on Yahoo, right? I mean, it's not far away from I'm going to be kicking in best ball season for me and getting ready for some of the magazines I'm working on. A ton of content on Yahoo, including a piece we're going to discuss today. So to me, I'm not. I do a lot of other stuff at Yahoo. I'm a baseball guy. I'm a hockey guy. I'm a basketball guy. So I am not as hardcore like, let's rank everybody in February and March and everything. I want to see where everybody goes. I want to see where everybody lands. Well, we're here now. Now, this is where I get pumped because I can't wait to draft a team. We just did a mock draft on Yahoo a few days ago that Andy Behrens wrote up. So to me, the draft season, fantasy draft season just started. As soon as the NFL draft was over, it's like, okay, where's my league? Where are my peeps? Where are my friends? Let's get this going.
Yeah, man, there's just no breaks. There's no, which is great because there's always something to talk about. There's always something to discuss. Yeah, we come off this draft process that, like you said, feels longer every single year. And now we turn the page, man. And that is what we are going to do here today. It's kind of like a little May tradition that we have here where Scott comes on the show and talks through his fantasy team power rankings, which we are going to break down. I'm very excited to get into it. But before we do that, we do have one quick announcement. We are very excited here at Yahoo to roll out an exclusive new benefit for Yahoo Fantasy Plus subscribers, our brand new invite-only Discord. I've been doing Discord stuff with Reception Perception for years. I'm very excited about doing it here now with Yahoo as well. It's a super fun platform. Trust me, you're going to love it. And in addition to that, I'm going to be hosting an AMA on Discord this Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern to help you with any of those post-draft fantasy-related questions that you might have. So for those of you watching on YouTube right now, you can scan the QR code at the bottom of the screen for $10 off promo to become a Yahoo Fantasy Plus member today. For everyone listening, you can take advantage of the deal at tinyurl.com/fantasy plus Discord. Remember, those spots are limited to Plus subscribers only, so hop in. I mean, what a time to be alive. We've got a QR code on this show. I mean, the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast is on the up and up. But let's move into the meat of the show here, Scott.
Hang on 1 second. I got to promote. I got to over promote here. Not only are we going to have the fine Matt Harmon, who puts the disco in Discord, doing that AMA. I'm going to be doing a baseball AMA next week, and there's going to be if you play other sports, this isn't just a football thing. Obviously, football is the fantasy beast, and we will continue to feed it. But if you're a multi-sport guy like I am, you want to talk some fantasy baseball, Scott Pianowski Discord next week. So there's a lot of fantasy football stuff. You get all sorts of advanced stats. We know if you play fantasy baseball, this is a fantasy football podcast. But if you play fantasy baseball, you need those advanced metrics to make your best decisions. That's all in the game. If you buy that Plus subscription, it's going to make you a better player. It's going to save you time. And you're going to get to hang out with people like Matt and people like myself. So it's a no-brainer. Check it out. See if it fits for you. And we'd love to see you in the Discord.
I love it. Yeah, like I said, I've been doing Discord for years with Reception Perception. This is going to be super fun as well. It's just a great way to interact. I'm sure Scott is going to. Scott mixes it up on Twitter on the start sits on Sunday morning. I promise you, Scott, you're going to have a better experience on Discord doing that. So I know Scott's going to be in there with the people. So I'm very excited. The people should be very excited as well.
Let's do it.
But with that, let's move into the meat of the show here. Like I said, it's a little bit of an annual tradition this time of year where Scott does his post-draft / free agency fantasy power rankings. basically, I mean, hey, this is probably the first time, won't be the last time it's said on this show. We're basically ranking the ecosystems that you want to invest in for your fantasy teams this year. What are the best offensive environments? A lot of different things go into putting this list together. So we're going to highlight the power rankings on the pod today in 3 tiers. You can find the list on the website, and you should go to yahoosports.com and check that out. You should read the whole piece to get Scott's analysis there, especially because we're not going to sit here and go through every single team in depth, but we're going to break them down into 3 tiers. We're going to go over the bottom 10 in the first segment, middle of the pack offenses in the second segment, and then the top 12 potentially, fringe elite to truly elite offenses in the final segment. Because like you said, Scott, the board is set, man. We pretty outside of, yes, we'll see what happens at the quarterback position in Pittsburgh, but otherwise the 32 offenses are set. We know what they look like. So let's dive into it here. Let's go through the bottom 10. I'm going to list them off, Scott, and then you tell me which ones. You tell me the first one that you want to highlight here. Number 32, we have the Tennessee Titans. 31, the Cleveland Browns. The 30th team is the New Orleans Saints. 29, New England Patriots. 28, Pittsburgh Steelers. 27, New York Giants. 26, New York Jets. 25, Carolina Panthers. 24, Jacksonville Jaguars. And 23, Indianapolis Colts. So, Scott, maybe towards the bottom of this list, which teams sort of do you want to start highlighting here?
Yeah, let's start with the Patriots. Full disclosure, grew up in New England. I'm a Patriots fan. They have overpaid my fandom back. If they stink for the rest of my life, I can live with it. This team's not going to stink, though. They hired the right coach. Yeah. They got the quarterback right. What did they do? All last year, we all said the same thing. Drake May's legit. Offensive line's terrible. He's got no playmaker, so they've improved the offensive line. There's certainly more things they could do there. They bring in Stephon Diggs, who Drake May said, hey, you were on my fantasy team like 5 years ago. That's a nice little nugget there. But what does Diggs have left? And then they draft Kyle Williams, this kid I really like, who said, hey, I got to play in the bowl game. I owe it to my team. He's such a get-it guy, a composure guy. I think he can play inside and outside. You can speak to that better than I can. I remember back in 2018, Cleveland Browns, New England Patriots, both looking at running backs. The Patriots had the first call, and they said, we're going to take Sony Michel out of Georgia. And the Browns said, that's great. We'll take Nick Chubb. Thank you. I think we got the opposite this year. Both teams needed running backs. The Browns went first, and I think they got a good Ohio State running back. I think they got the wrong one. I think Travion Henderson, who was more explosive last year. Obviously, there's a lot of things involved with that. We know Vrabel's an OSU guy. Henderson can make his team had no splash plays last year in New England, and I think Henderson's going to make them right away. I think Kyle Williams, a team that is famously drafted very poorly at the wide receiver position, a lot of the people who made those picks are no longer with the team, but I'm excited for Henderson. I'm excited for Williams. I've always been excited about Drake May, and Josh McDaniels is back as the offensive coordinator. Maybe he's never going to be a good head coach. It doesn't matter. He's a great offensive coordinator. I think the Patriots might be a playoff team this year. And I know I have them 29th. I think there's a lot of mobility in that rank. And I think the next time I do these rankings, they could easily be jumping 5 or 10 slots. I'm very excited about the upside of the New England Patriots in 2025.
When is the next time that you update these rankings? Is it later in the off season or do you wait till the
I think right before the season starts, I'll
Okay.
probably do it quarterly during the season.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I can barely remember what happened last week. It's hard for me to remember what we were doing this time last year. But no, I mean, the Patriots are one I flagged as a team that I think has, like you said, a lot of upward mobility. Just because we put the depth chart on the screen a little bit ago, a lot of new faces here. Even Garrett Bradbury at center could potentially lose his job to Jared Wilson, the center out of Georgia that they took in the 3rd round, who people were really excited about. So there's a lot of youth here. There's also some veterans that have been around the block, right? Like Mac Hollins and Stephon Diggs. I mean, I'm pretty confident that Diggs is going to start week 1. I maybe didn't think that a few weeks ago, but his recovery is going really well. It just seems like he has really been dialed in on the recovery process. So I don't know what Diggs, like, if he'll be. I mean, he's not going to be what he used to be, but I think if he's even like a facsimile of the guy he was last year for Houston, that's such a massive upgrade for New England. And obviously, this all comes back to Drake May. My faith in Drake May is very high, so therefore my faith in this ecosystem overall is very high as well. Travion Henderson bringing something in the run and pass phase. So I don't know like what the ceiling is on New England, Scott, but I think they're a team that could definitely jump into the next tier, like that middle of the pack team by mid-season or maybe towards the end of the 2025 season. So for that reason, like this is a good team to target some sleepers on in your draft.
I'm calling it right now. I think they could go 9-8. I think this could be a winning team.
I think they could be the second best team in that division.
The defense will be good. Yeah, for sure. Well, you mentioned that division. Let's jump to another AFC East team. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to give you right now the one player. If I were drafting against people who didn't know me, and that was my entire fantasy world, no hometown draft, no, let's screw up Pianowski with his rankings, let's sit on his players, none of that. I'm drafted with strangers all of 2025. I would tell you, Matt Harmon, that the player I would probably have rostered the most would be Justin Fields. It's really simple. It's Rich Rebar. It's the Konami code.
Yeah.
We know he's an aggressive runner, Fields is, and I guess Rebar might be too. And remember, he's got one really good receiver, Garrett Wilson. They played together at Ohio State, so at least they already know each other a little bit. There's some familiarity there. Fields, he takes too many sacks. I'm not sure what his real life upside is, but he's finally got the job. They're going to leave him alone, and the running stats are going to play so well. I think he could easily end up being. We did that mock draft. Okay, I waited on quarterback, and my strategy, I had the 2 pick. When it came back down to me one round, I'm like, okay, this is where I double tap Mahomes and Fields, and I took Mahomes first. Then it went to Dalton Del Don on the turn. He took Fields. And my heart was immediately broken. And I realized I needed to take Justin Fields before Patrick Mahomes, which sounds absolutely comical. I know a lot of people right now are saying, what Fields before Mahomes? What's wrong with you? Well, it's how you score fantasy. It's the Konami code. I don't know if the Jets are ever going to get things right. Although I really did like, of course, the head coach they hired, Aaron Glenn. I know him well from Detroit. I think he's a great culture guy. I think they got that right. He's a defensive guy, though. But Justin Fields has an outstanding chance to outkick his ADP. And I think this is finally, we waited forever for the right season from Terry McLaurin. We finally got it last year. Obviously, Fields is not Jaden Daniels, but I think it's finally a year where you're going to be glad you drafted Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't want to go too far with the Garrett Wilson stuff just because we've famously been too far on the Garrett Wilson stuff for 2 years in a row now. Sure. But I do think like, there's something instructive to that season that he had with DJ Moore, Justin Fields. And I think Garrett Wilson at his best can be a better player than DJ Moore. And I think that they can win in kind of some similar ways here, like get the ball to him early and often. I think Wilson has a chance to be a 30% target share player. And I think he's going to need to, because the Jets last year were dead last in rush attempts per game. That was just like the structure of that offense. They didn't run the ball well. Breece Hall kind of coming off of a down season. The offensive line wasn't very good. This year, I think they could lead the NFL in rush attempts per game. They probably have to be more of a winning team than many expect them to be to get there, but I certainly think they're going to be top 10 in rush attempts per game, because this is key for the Fields point too. He's got to keep his job all year for him to be a fantasy starting quarterback. And I mean, Tyrod Taylor is behind him. They paid him like just starter level money. So I think he's the odds on favorite to start all 17 games. But critically, to do that, he's got to not get sacked a ton. He leads all quarterbacks in sack rate since he came into the NFL. But this is important here because this offensive line is, if all these young guys like Armand Membu and like Olu Fashanu continues on what he did at the end of last year, this could be a really, really good group, which that's critical for Justin Fields being able to deliver the football to Garrett Wilson, and also for this run game sort of being able to express its ceiling as well.
Remember, sacks are more of a quarterback stat than they are an offensive line stat. So that is on Fields. That is obviously going to be the number one thing. Protect the ball, avoid the negative plays. I'll also say that for somebody like a lot of people, I was all in on Breece Hall not that long ago. Now I'm kind of all out on Breece Hall because Braylon Allen's going to play. They think Davis, their third back, is pretty good. And obviously Fields is going to take a big slice of that pie and leave it on his own plate. So I don't think, you don't know how the draft dynamics in the market will shift in the summer. And this is all in pencil. I will erase any of this when new information comes about or when somebody gives me a good angle I haven't considered. But right now I would think I would draft very little of Breece Hall this year.
Yeah, it's telling that Aaron Glenn, who is like totally, this is a blank slate program with him there now. I think they're starting. There's some young players, obviously some good young players that they have that they're going to invest and develop and all that stuff. But his comments about, hey, we had two guys, or the Jets, them being we had Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis last year. Like we have 3 guys that we can play. That was telling to me because I don't know that that's just they're going to split the workload evenly 3 ways or something like that. But I do think those comments were telling if you're looking for Breece Hall to get back to like top 5, top 10 fantasy running back status. But I do think this run game overall is going to be good. Let's hope Tanner Engstrand can push the right buttons, because He was the passing game coordinator, and I think tight ends coach for a minute there with the Detroit Lions. I'm interested in the like tight end coach to offensive coordinator pipeline because you touch a little bit of the run game. You also touch a little bit of the pass game. But it's at least it's a little interesting that he didn't just get the job in Detroit after Ben Johnson left, that they went not totally outside the building because John Morton will come back to the Lions later, much later in the show. They went and got later. John Morton, who had been in the much later. He had been in the building before, but he was with the Broncos last season working with Sean Payton and brought him in to be the offensive coordinator. That's just like the tiniest bit on my radar. I don't know if it's a negative or anything because I had heard good things about Tanner Engstrand and all that. So that is critical to these Jets guys, maybe if they have any upward mobility here.
Yeah, let me just close with one more thing. Really simple with Breece Hall and with any. Now in the NFL, where there's so few bell cows, right? We can live with two running backs. When a team cuts its backfield 60-40, 70-30 with a couple of guys, two's no big deal. Two will make do. It's when you see three that you flee. So you have to ask yourself if you're going to draft Breece Hall, am I worried that Davis might take 5 to 7 touches off the table? And again, we have a running quarterback here. So I want you, whenever you're considering any backfield in the NFL for fantasy purposes, ask yourself how many people get regular work. If it's 2, not a big deal. If it's 3, that's where we start having a problem.
I want to go back to I guess you call it the top or the bottom of these rankings here just for a second, because I don't think anybody's going to fight you on the Titans. Although obviously, if Cam Ward is great, there's upward mobility there, but he is still a rookie quarterback. And, it's not as if they're just booming with weapons there. It's basically Calvin Ridley and a lot of guys that they took on day 3, undrafted rookies, things of that nature. I certainly don't think anybody's going to fight you on the Cleveland Browns. I wish I could share some of Scott's very funny text he was sending me during our draft show about the Cleveland Browns because there were some heaters there, but we'll leave those for off the air. The one that is interesting is number 30, the New Orleans Saints, who not just since you and I have spoken on the podcast, Scott, but since we've done the podcast period, we found out over the weekend that Derek Carr is going to retire. I'm going to take exception to our current offense graphic here with the New Orleans Saints depth chart. I would, whatever the odds are on Tyler Shuck as the starting quarterback in week 1, I already thought he should be the favorite even with Carr in the picture because that relationship had dissolved to a point that he just freaking retired. I think Carr, if I had to predict it right now, I think we see Derek Carr back in the NFL again at some point. I don't think he's done. I think he was just done with the Saints, and this is the smoothest way for everybody to kind of win a little bit in a divorce that was needed. I don't think Spencer Rattler freaking people tweet about Jake Haener. Give me a break. I don't think those guys are even really in contention. Like, I think Shuck would have to basically pee down his leg in training camp to not be the week 1 starter. And maybe he does. But does Tyler Shuck, who's kind of a toolsy-ish quarterback, but there are some flaws in the profile, obviously, that we all know about. Does him being the starting quarterback here make you any more interested in a Saints team that does have some interesting pass catchers and a running back that people want to draft?
Man, a lot to unpack here. First of all, when you draft Shuck, I don't know how you get Shuck with Shough, but it's Shuck. Yeah. When you draft a guy who turns 26 in September with the draft capital they spent, that speaks volumes. This isn't a project. This isn't a backup. This is our day 1 starter. This is our opening day starter. You would never make that pick without believing that. He was in college longer than the Animal House guys. He had that one great year at Louisville, which is why he landed where he did. He went to college everywhere, all through America, which is the current experience. I just want to know, Matt, I think this is the first year I'm not going to draft Chris Olave proactively. And it's been all about the injuries. And we always spend half of our podcast talking about Ohio State receivers. We already got Wilson and McLaurin into the program. I'm sure we'll talk JSN at some point, but I just want to see Chris Olave have a healthy season. Even if I get nothing, I think it's like one of these, I don't draft him. He has a great year. He's wide receiver 6. I'm like, oh, good for Olave. We always knew he could do it. The indoor stadium, they're going to have to play some pinball. Does it seem like a million years ago that they were 2-0 last year and Kubiak's offense was singing? And it's like, oh my God, look out, here come the Saints. And then everything just fell apart. And maybe they just caught some teams at the right time. Carolina and Dallas, I think, were their first 2 opponents. And I think Carolina beat them when they rematched. But Shuck, look, here's the thing with fantasy, right? Because you're thinking, oh, Shuck, why are you even talking about this guy? I'm not going to draft him. We just need him to be competent because we want to draft Raheed Shaheed off a major injury. We want to draft Olave if he can play. We may want to draft Alvin Kamara, who needs the buoyancy of the offense. He's getting really close to that age where you worry about maybe a drop off. With the two receivers, the two primary receivers, the injury concerns there, Olave again. I don't know what's gonna. He's almost like Tua at this point, where it's like you'd be shocked if he played a full season. I hate saying that. Shaheed off a major injury, he was having a breakout. Kamara in a dangerous age pocket. This is probably going to be the team I'm going to draft into the least, even though I see the talent here. But there's just so many questions. I don't know how good Shuck will be ready to go. Do you feel like this team, maybe they want to bottom out? Could Arch Manning be the number one pick in the draft next year to the New Orleans Saints, right? What a legacy pick that would be. This franchise started with Archie Manning back in the 70s, right? Now his grandson might be their quarterback next year. I think this is a transition year for the Saints. They're getting ready for the future. They've had some salary cap issues as well. This is an offense you're going to want to avoid, even though there's some big names. We've had some great times with Kamara in the past, but I don't think I'm going to be pressing a lot of Saints this year.
Yeah, man, it really obviously it does come down to Tyler Shuck, which is it's simplistic analysis, but it is the truth of the matter here. I am kind of on the other side of the token with Chris Olave, man, and even and look, of course I am, because I love this player. I think he was so unlucky last year. I mean, we obviously it comes down to injuries, but even early on in the season, you're watching him and it's like, oh, he's playing a big role for this team. Like Rashid Shaheed got some of the shot plays when he was able to split safeties or they had single high stuff, whatever. But Olave was getting those like critical first read, like in breaking targets and stuff like that, which is what we needed to see from him because that was so absent in his role with the previous Saints offensive coaching staff. So that was encouraging. But again, he just didn't catch touchdowns. It was,
he's never caught touchdowns, Matt. He's got 10 touchdowns in 39 games.
Not a lot of touchdowns to go around with the New Orleans Saints. And when they did go around earlier, it's like Taysom Hill and Jimmy Graham popped up for a touchdown vulture season. So it's a weird time.
It's that it's not your fault. You want to give him the Goodwill Hunting hug.
I know.
But at some point, part of that has to be considered part of the Olave experience. Until
I don't know how many touchdowns are going to go around this year. That's the thing. I don't know how many touchdowns are going to go. But here's the thing that gets me, Scott, is like this guy is going 59th overall, like it rankings, early rankings wise. And for that reason, in a couple early drafts, I have clicked him. And I do think we can't. Of course, bro. Of course I have. And here's the thing too. Like we probably don't talk about it enough. I think Derek Carr, like we know who he is as a quarterback. He's a starting NFL quarterback. I think we know who Chris Olave is as a player. He's a really, really good route runner, separator, all that stuff. Those guys just never saw eye to eye in terms of the way they see the game. And they just really never had that chemistry. Obviously, Shuck is a projection, but there's a part of me that just wants to think like something different here has to be better. But you are certainly speaking on the more rational end of the Chris Olave discussion. I am certainly speaking on the hopium level. So we'll see who ends up having the right mix of stuff here. Let's go to another team here. I don't think anybody's going to fight you on the Saints 30th, but I want to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars, who you have at 24th. And I actually think them and the Panthers are two teams that have some decent upward mobility as well, but especially the Jacksonville Jaguars, Scott, at 24. The Bucs ran 64.4 plays per game in 2024 under Liam Cohen. That was the sixth most. I also should have mentioned with Kellen Moore and the New Orleans Saints. That's always been an offense under Kellen Moore that's ran a lot of plays. But look, Jacksonville's offense it was really bad under Doug Peterson, construction-wise, run game-wise, a lot of things. How much of a transformative effect are we looking at here in Jacksonville? Like how much upward mobility is there with Liam Cohen and obviously Travis Hunter coming into the mix here? And of course, Brian Thomas Jr. in year 2.
Right. How you feel about the Jaguars is a statement on how you feel about Liam Cohen. It was a year ago where the the Buccaneers lost Dave Canales. Canales, of course, went to the Panthers. And we didn't know if the Buccaneers, Baker had a great year, but what's going to happen now? You've lost the guy who cooked all of it up. And can Canales get something cooking in Carolina? He was replacing an antiquated coaching staff. Well, it took a while for Carolina to come around. I guess we're not going to talk about Carolina today, probably. But I actually, Bryce Young, the way he played at the end of last year, really.
We can talk about him after we talk Jags. We can get in. I'm always have them in the next Panthers.
Maybe I forgot that they're in the middle of my rankings. I'm a pro Carolina guy, a pro Canales guy. But maybe Liam Cohen was even better for the Buccaneers than Canales was. Baker, 41 touchdown passes. So Jacksonville, they needed to. I mean, Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl. Philadelphia was a good coach, but he seemed like a guy who had antiquated ideas, modern coaching, a modern player in Hunter. Obviously, Brian Thomas was always open last year. As poorly as the quarterback play, as bad as the quarterback play was, as bad as the play calling was, as bad as everything around Brian Thomas was, he was too good to fail. And somehow he landed, wide receiver 6 or whatever, depending on how you score your league. I mean, he was fantastic. So if you're a believer in Liam Cohen, you're a believer in Thomas. I think everybody's a believer in Hunter. By proxy, Matt, do we have to believe in Trevor Lawrence again? He's had such a strange career. He's still just in his mid-20s. He was let's lose all of our games and draft Trevor Lawrence. That's how people felt about him once upon a time, and it's always fallen short. There's been some injuries. There's been some bad luck with the coaching. He's had even some bad runouts with his receivers getting hurt and stuff like that. Now he's got everything. He's got the coach. He's got 2 dynamic receivers. We're going to find out. Finally, this year, is Trevor Lawrence capable of being a down ballot MVP guy, or is he just another average quarterback that you forget about?
It's a great question. And I think it is kind of the central question to answering if whether the Jaguars have upward mobility or not here, Scott, because everything you just laid out there, am I a Liam Cohen believer? Yes. People that listen to this podcast or Football 301 over the last 365 days absolutely know that this was one of my favorite offenses last year from just a design standpoint, the way the run game worked, the way the run and pass game worked off each other. I think just the fact that Cohen made that offense functional when both of the big receivers in Tampa Bay went down, such a feather in his cap. Then you look at the 2 pass catchers. Travis Hunter is one of the best receiver prospects I have ever seen, and he is someone that made a lot of stuff that was wrong in the Colorado offense right last year. He made, and you know what Brian Thomas Jr. was for the 2024 Jacksonville Jaguars? He could make a wrong play right. Yeah, he was deodorant, man, because that stuff stunk, but somehow they had a top, a guy who played a top 10 receiver in the NFL last year, produced at a top 10 level last year in Brian Thomas Jr. because he averaged, I have said this stat so many times over the offseason because I just talk way too much. He averaged 10 yards per target on screens last year. Screens, passes that go behind the line of scrimmage. Brian Thomas Jr., 10 yards per target on screen passes last year. Now he's getting one of the best screen play callers in the game in Liam Cohen. And coming back to Trevor Lawrence here, Scott, like you said, can he just be average? Can he be functional? I mean, think about what we used to talk about Baker Mayfield. And I was one of the biggest Baker haters coming out of his Carolina Panthers tenure. And this guy, obviously Canales in the first year with Tampa Bay, but last year it was even better with Liam Cohen. I feel like if Baker Mayfield could recover from, I'm a guy who's signing a $4 million deal to go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after my career was in the tank, could now be over the last 2 seasons one of the most productive quarterbacks in the league. I feel like we can get Trevor Lawrence to functional in Liam Cohen's offense.
There's so many similarities, right? We're talking about number 1 overall picks who just collapsed. Yeah. Baker left for dead, bounced around all around the league. Cleveland had to get rid of him when they got the Watson deal, and we could talk forever on that. But thankfully for the listeners, we will not. Man, what a quarterback room! They have 17 guys, and none of them make any sense. I love the Browns. Never change, Cleveland, but no. It's Canales and Cohen did it with Baker. Why can't? And I think most people would have liked Trevor Lawrence more than Baker Mayfield anyway. So, yeah. And you mentioned Thomas, Matt, when we get to Mondays in the NFL, Sunday is the big day, although the NFL won't be happy until they take over every day of the calendar. We know they're trying to do that every holiday, everything, the NFL dominates, and, that's fine. We're good with that. Bills. When I get to Monday, an NFL season, it's time to rewatch. I don't want to watch ugly stuff. I don't want to watch. Maybe I should immediately say who needs to be fixed, who needs to be audited, who played the worst offense the previous day, and I need to watch it. Maybe I should be wired that way. That's usually a Tuesday problem for me. I want to treat myself on Monday. And a lot of times I was treating myself by just watching Brian Thomas because he can run the whole route tree. We knew he could beat people deep, but his intermediate and short stuff, and again, you can speak to this better than anybody, was so good. You talked about that, how he was dynamic in the screen game, and now he gets Cohen to come in. Brian Thomas is quarterback proof, and I don't say that about many receivers. All the people talk about, why wasn't Marvin Harrison great? You want to feel good about the rookie class? Just pretend Marvin Harrison was Brian Thomas. And maybe Harrison's going to be a very good player in time, but if they redrafted, right, Thomas would have to go in front of Harrison, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Can I give you a great Brian Thomas Jr. reception perception stat? Because I just put his profile out. Okay, so Brian Thomas Jr., year one, 80.8% success rate versus press coverage. That is a 93rd percentile mark all time in reception perception. Here are the other rookie wide receiver seasons who have cleared the 90th.
As a rookie with no quarterback play. Yeah, awesome.
As a rookie. So these are the other guys who have cleared the 90th percentile versus press coverage in reception perception, which is 2014 to present, as rookies. CeeDee Lamb in 2020, Michael Thomas in 2016, Tyreek Hill in 2016, Garrett Wilson in 2022, Justin Jefferson in 2020, Jamar Chase in 2021, Ladd McConkey in 2024, and Odell Beckham in 2014. So you could actually say that is a Brian Thomas Jr. tweet disguised as a Garrett Wilson tweet, or disguised as a Ladd McConkey tweet, disguised as a Brian Thomas Jr. tweet. But regardless, that whole thing, that is some pretty impressive company that Brian Thomas Jr. keeps. Like, those are some of the best receivers of this era: CeeDee Lamb, Michael Thomas, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Odell Beckham, all these guys. Like, that's the trajectory this guy's on. So, and they took a guy who Travis Hunter might be even better. I mean, he might be. I'm not saying that he will be in year one, but like in time, he might even be a better player, or at the very least, like one of the best running mates in the NFL. Like that. So with that dynamism alone, it's tough for me to think they can't jump up into the next grouping here from 24 in your rankings.
Right. And you don't worry about drafting either Thomas or Hunter, because there's just so little behind them on the depth chart. It's going to be a narrow concentration. And you'll hear it later in the podcast, by the way. I am so over the moon for McConkey, and we'll get to them when we get to the Chargers. Really quickly. We're already probably running late on time, but is there anything good, anything proactive about this backfield for fantasy purposes?
Yeah, I'm hoping, Scott, that by the time you publish the update before the season, we've got some like
ETN's
clarity on. Yeah, ETN's gone. They're hyping up. They're pumping up Basil Tootin out of Virginia Tech, because I do think I took Tank Bigsby in our last mock draft. I think if you made me pick a Jacksonville Jaguars running back and it's not Tootin, I think I'd go with Tank Bigsby, because he was just a flat out better runner last season. But that's the one thing that we're missing here, is like a clear answer at running back.
Right. And remember, the new regime, they inherited ETN.
Yes.
They did not draft him. So ETN, I would not at all be surprised if ETN's either demoted, traded, something. And I don't think ETN wants to be there either. So that seems like something that's a resolution is coming fairly soon.
All right, let's take our first break. When we come back, we're going to talk through the middle of the pack offenses that kind of maybe they could go either way this year, right after this. All right, we're back. Let's talk through the middle of the pack teams here, Scott. Starting with a really interesting one. Number 22, Denver Broncos. Number 21, Miami Dolphins. Number 20, Seattle Seahawks. Number 19, Houston Texans. Number 18, Los Angeles Chargers. Number 17, Las Vegas Raiders. Number 16, Washington Commanders. Number 15, Green Bay Packers. Number 14, Chicago Bears. And number 13, Arizona Cardinals. Some really interesting teams here, Scott. I'm going to throw the Denver Broncos at you first. I want to be in on the Broncos this year, but it's just tough to figure out like their ancillary pass catchers. It's RJ Harvey. How high are we drafting him? Thoughts on Denver, your last team ranked here, but I think this is definitely a team that could have some upward mobility.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we like Sean Payton, and he identified his guy last year in Bo Nix. Experience, a little bit older for a quarterback prospect, and Payton didn't worry about that. And Nix ended up being a top 10 fantasy quarterback in most formats. Their running back room had no right answer, and I think everybody thinks that RJ Harvey, where they drafted him, how they prioritized him, has a chance to be featured really soon. I mean, maybe even as quickly as opening day. They didn't get, I know they said nice things about Pat Bryant, who they drafted, but I don't think they got the fall in the draft that they wanted at the receiver position. I think they would have liked to have a bigger addition there. Cortland Sutton is just one of those forever underrated professional guys, the boring value vet. I like to draft some of those. Although maybe it's more of a fantasy baseball strategy than a fantasy football strategy. Evan Ingram, an older tight end who doesn't get downfield, doesn't score touchdowns. I don't think I'm going to be in on Ingram. The question you have to ask yourself with the Broncos is, how in am I on Harvey? Because somebody in your draft is going to be, hey, it's Peyton. Hey, it's a guy they prioritize. Hey, it's the most pedestrian running back room going. Estime is just a guy. McLaughlin, because of his size, is never going to have a high ceiling for touches. So you have to have a stance on Harvey. And if it's not a pro stance, if you're kind of, well, I like him, but I don't love him, you're not going to get him because somebody in your draft is going to love RJ Harvey.
Yeah, I feel like every time I check in on the Fantasy Pros consensus rankings, RJ Harvey has risen a couple of spots. Right now, he's running back 24. I'll tell you what, Scott, I will eat this pen if he is if he is ranked behind Aaron Jones and Tony Pollard by the time actual drafts are rolling in August. Like if he is not lower than this, or if he's not above those guys. So yeah, man, I think that RJ Harvey's kind of the big winner here. I think Bo Nix is a really nice fantasy quarterback. Again, it's a little difficult to identify those ancillary pass catchers. And Cortland Sutton's like wide receiver 23, which seems perfect. Like he doesn't have the upside to really outkick that, but he certainly could finish, I don't know, wide receiver 15, and I wouldn't be all that surprised by it. And I would be a little bit surprised if he was something like wide receiver 33. Like these are all like arbitrary numbers, but again, I think he's perfectly ranked there. I think in your next update, Scott, it will be interesting to see if we have any clarity on like the Pat Bryants of the world, the Marvin Mimses of the world, and obviously Evan Ingram is an interesting fantasy tight end, but they're a fascinating ecosystem to discuss here. I want to throw actually three teams at you here in the middle of your rankings. Houston Texans at 19, Los Angeles Chargers at 18, and Las Vegas Raiders at 17. I think the Texans and the Chargers have a lot, especially the Texans, have a lot of upward mobility here. Let me just lay out kind of my case, and I want to hear what you think about these two teams. Like I think both of them, to me, I would rank both of them ahead of the Raiders. That's why I wanted to throw them out there because like obviously with the Raiders, we know they have Ashton Genty, we know they have Brock Bowers, but we'll see what, like, I really like Jack Besh, but we'll see what Jack Besh is. Like, how many other fantasy winners do they really have in that offense? It could be a good one, but we don't know. Chip Kelly's interesting. Again, Texans, though, they have a running back that people want to draft in Joe Mixon. They have a wide receiver who should go in the first round in Nico Collins. I think there's a right answer in the receiver core between like the two young guys, maybe Christian Kirk's a value, whatever. I think CJ Stroud can have a bounce back year. They, to me, certainly felt like a team that could have some upward mobility here. And yeah, the Chargers, however high you are on Ladd McConkey, it's not high enough. I'm telling you that right now. Guy is a great player. Just an awesome football player. And then Amari Hampton, I think, could be one of the other big risers over the course of the preseason. And I think Justin Herbert could have a bounce back fantasy season as well. So to me, those two teams stuck out as I could see them leaping teams like Green Bay, Arizona, and definitely the Raiders who you had ranked here.
Yeah, there's a similarity with these two teams because I like Herbert. I like Stroud. I'm giving Stroud a pass for just about everything that went wrong last year because his whole receiver room got hurt and his offensive line, which was bad to begin with. Those guys got hurt too. You have to think of all the things we said about Stroud 2 years ago. You can't get tripped up by a season that it basically excused absence. Both these teams are very similar to me in that Collins is a god and Ladd McConkey's a god too. Last 10 games, 88 yards a game, and then he goes 197 in the playoffs. The only reason why people aren't just jumping up and down, and you're doing it, I'm doing it. The only reason everybody else isn't doing it with McConkey is he played for a Georgia team that had great defense and didn't have to throw the ball over the yard. And then he went to the Chargers where they basically just want to out physical you and they want to control the ball and they didn't have to be this aerial circus. Ladd McConkey is a great second round pick. Anywhere you can get him, I'm going to have Ladd McConkey shares. If I overpay for them, I don't care. He's going to catch 115 passes this year. You're going to want Ladd. You're going to regret. It's going to pain you. If you were between McConkey and somebody else and you took somebody else, you're going to regret that. Please get this guy this year. But what we don't know. Now, I like Houston's plausible answers a lot more than the Chargers. I mean, maybe Kirk has something left. Maybe one of the rookies. They draft two rookies from the same team of all things. You almost never see that, but there's probably a right answer there. Joe Mixon also only in age 28 season. It feels like he should be 35 right now. But of course, he was part of that wave where running backs started coming out younger and younger. So that these guys, maybe they feel a year or two older than they really are. It's a matter of do you care about the mileage or not. This class has actually aged really well. And Joe Mixon is just, even when he's not effective, he's going to have that 1 year where he averages like 3.4 yards a carry and still scores like 11 touchdowns. And people are going to be sick of that. It's like, well, he doesn't get hurt. He can play in all packages and he knows how to get he knows how to find that 2 yard crease and get into the end zone. So I think you lined out Houston. It's interesting. I think the Chargers have a higher floor, which is why I ranked them a little bit higher. But if you told me which of these offenses would maybe jump by 6 or 7 slots, in the middle of the season, that's probably the Texans.
I think what people forget about the Chargers too is that after their bye week, which is critical because it was an early bye week, and remember, Justin Herbert was super banged up to start last year. Like he came in super, super banged up, and coming out of that early week 5 bye, they were 6th in neutral pass rate last year. Like this was not the Jim Harbaugh, we want to establish it that people thought it was going to be. And look, they drafted a round one, Greg Roman, the whole deal. They drafted a round 1 running back. I think they want their run game to be a lot more effective last year. They were a bottom 5 team in rushing success rate. They want that to be different now that they have Najee Harris and Amarian Hampton, but they still showed they want to throw the football. Adding Trey Harris, I think, really completes this receiver core as like he's a true X receiver. It might be Mike Williams to start the year, but I think it'll be Trey Harris by the end of the year. I will say, to counteract my point here, I might be yada-yaing both offensive lines. Houston's offensive line was a mess last year. It's the reason Stroud had that down season. I'm not totally convinced that they fixed the problem with some of their veteran additions this year. The Chargers, I certainly think, could have invested more in the interior. Mekhi Becton was up, and he was obviously like a bit of a revelation as a convert to guard with the Eagles, but now he's graduating from Jeff Stoutland University. How does he do now in the real world? Zion Johnson, Bradley Bozeman, like these guys are running it back. We'll see. Like that's something to consider here as we're talking about these offensive lines. But speaking of offensive lines, I want to go back to a team in Seattle at 20. What are we doing with the Seahawks? Because whatever we outlined like last year, totally different picture now. All new in Seattle. Kubiak's the offensive coordinator. Sam Darnold's the quarterback. They added a round 1, Greg Zabel, offensive lineman there to play the interior, and the receiving core got a full-scale makeup here with Cooper Kupp and MVS replacing DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett.
Right. Just one more thing I want to bookmark on McConkey. I said either or pick. You might regret not taking McConkey. I'll give you one example of that. If you come down to A.J. Brown versus Ladd McConkey, I want you to take Ladd McConkey every time.
Woo!
So I'm planting my flag. There it is.
Right,
and
like
A.J. Brown's a fantastic football player. We loved him at Ole Miss. We loved him at Tennessee. We loved him going to the Eagles where they'd actually throw him the ball. But I would take McConkey every time in that. And it's not for any lack of love for A.J. Brown. So there you go on that. Seattle, everything's new, right? New quarterback, new coaching. Jackson Smith and Jigba had the breakout year last year. There's even talk of maybe Milroe could get a package or some athleticism stuff that could hurt Darnold. I mean, I think we have to accept the whole question last year was who is Sam Darnold, right? He was a quasi MVP candidate for a while. And then when the lights were brightest, they were playing for the number 1 seed. He plays horrible at Detroit. Okay, it's one game. Goes to the playoffs, and the Rams absolutely stole his lunch money in the playoffs. And now we have to oh man, do we just forget that for 3.5 months, Sam Darnold was great? Was it just a mirage because Kevin O'Connell is a wizard and Minnesota has great pieces? Not quite the Minnesota setup here, but at least JSN, so nice to see him break out his second year because the first year you just never saw the explosiveness and he was miscast and there were people in front of him. There's just a lot of, again, come back to the phrase excused absence for JSN his rookie year. But last year he was dynamic, man. He was so much fun to watch him win, and not just on the layup targets, but win downfield, win on 50-50, win in explosiveness. A guy who could score from anywhere on the field. We know at one point Brian Hartline thought JSN might have been the best of those Ohio State receivers. There's been a bunch of them, and we talk about them on this podcast. I'm sure we'll get to more of them later. But I think he's a great second-round pick, no matter what you think of Darnold. The big X factor here to me, 2 things. How many games does Walker play in the backfield? And what is Cooper Kupp like at this stage of his career? Because I could see a lot of range of outcomes for Kupp. I could see Kupp, he played 15 games. He got 100 balls. He was a really good wide receiver 14. I could also see, he played 5 games. The Rams knew what they were doing. What was Seattle thinking? This is obviously a back 9 player. They went backwards instead of forwards. What is your, whether it's Walker you want to talk about or Kupp or both guys, how do you see those inflection points in Seattle?
Yeah, I mean, Cooper Kupp, I'm pretty nervous about. I think this might be a 1-year thing, and I just don't think he's got a lot left. And I don't think he's a very versatile player. I think he has to be close to the line of scrimmage, slot guy. I will say, I think Darnold's a guy who can get a little scatterbrained under pressure. I think having Cooper Kupp just near the line of scrimmage as a guy that when you throw him the ball against zone coverage, he's going to be open and he's going to catch it. But that's about all he can do at this point of his career. That's a pretty limited menu, but it will help the quarterback out. JSN's really actually the critical point to me. Like, can he truly break out from, okay, year one, like you said, just kind of a role player. Year two, awesome. Year three, can we get him into like true superstar status? I think that has to happen for this offense to come together. And in the backfield, this is another team that I hope by the time you do the update, we have some real clarity on what this new coaching staff, and Clint Kubiak, I mean, I thought he was a nice offensive coordinator with the Saints last year. I thought he had some good ideas, but they've basically made the whole offseason around like, what can we do to make Clint Kubiak's offense work? That's kind of a big, like, it's a big statement on Clint Kubiak, and I don't really know how he feels about Kenneth Walker or Zach Charbonnet. I'll tell you what the fantasy community thinks. The fantasy community thinks it is Kenneth Walker's job. He's going off the board, running back 16 in early rankings in Fantasy Pros. Zach Charbonnet down there at 36. Like, I wonder if there's more clarity on, maybe that's the truth. Maybe that's what happens. But I wonder if there's more clarity on that by the time you do these ranking updates. So kind of just, that's my general thoughts on Seattle, which I do think is a fascinating offense to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, Kubiak, he's got the pedigree. I mean, it's obviously Gary Kubiak was his father. He's a well-respected guy. He's worked with the 49ers. He's worked with Kevin O'Connell. He's worked with a lot of people we respect. And they had that moment for 2 weeks. They were the talk of the NFL. And then you can blame most of what went wrong in New Orleans on injuries. So we're going to find out what Clint Kubiak is in his late 30s. Is he an up-and-comer? Is he somebody who's eventually going to be a head coach? Is he one of the right answers? Or is it just he had a moment and it kind of came and went? I don't know. I think Seattle's going to play the joke. I think Mina Kimes came up with this, that Seattle never plays a normal game, that maybe Kevin Clark came up with it.
I think Kevin Clark said that about the Seahawks during like the late Russell Wilson era, when that was certainly true.
Right. Just crazy. And of course, Wilson played into that. Another guy with a sack problem, but he could also make unbelievable off-script plays. I think we're going to see a lot of that with Darnold. You know, the greatest highlights you'll see are like the 3 or 4 best Darnold throws of the week. And the plays that make you want to gouge your eyes out are the 3 or 4 plays that Darnold makes that lose you the game, right? He's just good enough to go 8-9 with, I feel like. I think Seattle's going to be a dysfunctional team, but there's going to be a lot of fun in that dysfunction.
Okay. I want to talk through just real quickly here, 16, 15, and 14, Commanders, Packers, Bears. And I'm going to just ask you a question, and you give me a one-word answer, not a one-word, one-sentence answer on my question. So starting with 16, Commanders, am I wrong to just like wish they had gotten one young guy in the wide receiver room and one young guy in the running back room? Because I'm a little disappointed. I'm like, these nice players, but I mean, I wish there was a young player I could get excited about at either or both of those positions.
Yeah, what are you doing? Jaden Daniels is this, unbelievable talent, and you have the oldest skill talent around him. Zach Ertz is 1,000,000 years old. McLaurin and Samuel, we like both of those guys, but they're older than you think. It's an old running back room as well. They needed some fresh paint here. I think maybe they got a little bit cocky with, we're ahead of schedule, and Daniels just makes, he's the deodorant. He makes everything look good. Not that we don't love McLaurin. We've obviously loved him for years, but
McLaurin aside, it's like the Debo of it all. Like
they needed somebody to hang their hat on. Like we talked about Tennessee in passing, their receivers here, their 2 top guys are in their 30s. Next year, it's like, all right, Cam, you got the team. Next year, we'll actually get you somebody you're excited to throw the ball to, who you can grow with for the next 5 years. I think Washington missed an opportunity. This team badly needed fresh paint. And they said, no, we're fine with the paint.
Okay, that wasn't one sentence, but fine.
No, it wasn't.
Number 15, Green Bay Packers. By the end of the season, Scott, are we going to have cared about anybody other than Josh Jacobs in fantasy this season in terms of I think best ball aside, like true redraft leagues? Are we going to have cared about anybody besides Josh Jacobs?
I'm going to actually do it right this time. No, we're not going to, because they're going to rotate their receivers, and it's going to be whack-a-mole. And whenever you're playing fantasy, it's always like, what receiver can I count on to get 8 to 10 touches a week, 8 to 10 targets a week? You're just not going to see that here.
Number 14, Chicago Bears. This time, it's different, right?
Well, they hired an offensive play caller, head coach we all love. They fixed the offensive line. They added an impact receiver to a good receiver room already. They added a tight end that everybody loves. Love is in his last name, for crying out loud. Unless Caleb Williams can't play, man, he got everything he wanted for Christmas. So it's like, if you don't have a great season, maybe it's you, but I'm excited. I believe in the Bears.
I also tend towards believing in the Bears. And 14 seems so high for the damn Chicago Bears, but on paper, I get it. The words of Austin Eckler ringing in my ears. Paper doesn't play football. People play football. It is certainly on paper an offense that should be good to go. Very interested to see how the work ends up kind of distributing, but we have all summer to talk about those things. Last thing before we throw to break here, number 13, Arizona Cardinals. Scott, this one was too high. This one was too high to me. And I think in your heart of hearts, you know it's too high because in your article, you wrote, Trey McBride had a frustrating lack of touchdowns, but that's more of a Kyler Murray flag than anything else. I mean, yeah, the quarterback's a red flag. I like Kyler Murray, I think, but I don't think he's anything better than like the 15th best quarterback in the league. There might be moments where he is the 5th best quarterback in the league, like 1 to 2 drives a game, maybe like every other game. But like in the aggregate, I think the best we're getting out of him is he was the 15th best quarterback in the NFL this season. And I just think there's a lot of structural questions. You know, Harrison's role, really tough to sort of parse that one out. Again, this could be a long, long conversation. But to me, Scott, the only one that I was like, buddy, I got to talk you down was 13 Arizona Cardinals.
Be really simple on this. You're right. There's an old expression that you put out your rankings, but you really don't test them until you draft, and then you find out how you really feel about the player pool. That's kind of how I feel a little bit about this article, that I put it out there, but it's not until I start getting in the weeds with Schwab or getting in the weeds with you or Andy or Dalton or some of our other Yahoo colleagues or some of the people on Twitter, talk to Salvatore or somebody like that. That's Rich Rebar. That's where I really find out. Evan Silva, so many smart people in the industry. That's where I start making the ranks better. Arizona's too high. I don't trust Kyler. And I think the thing is, when I love somebody in rankings, sometimes I want to be careful not to go over the moon for them, just to kind of check myself, just to make sure I'm trying to stay balanced. And I think because I've always not been a Kyler guy, I think sometimes I maybe rank him a little bit higher because I just want to make sure my personal distrust of the player doesn't seep in deeper to the rankings than I should. But you're right. I mean, we don't trust the quarterback. He's never getting any taller. There's going to be some throws he can't see, some throws he can't make. It's not a particularly deep offense. They didn't know how to utilize. Their two best players last year were a tight end they couldn't get in the end zone and a rookie receiver who they couldn't get layup targets to. That's a failure of everybody here. I've ranked Arizona too high, and I will fix that the moment we finish recording.
Yeah, I think maybe I could be being a little too hard on the Cardinals. There's a part of me that thinks that, but there's just and I think Marvin Harrison really encapsulates it well, that I think he played better than his kind of statistics or maybe the reputation of him as a rookie. But in order for him to break out, there's got to be a role change. And I just really, like you mentioned, Kyler Murray not being able to see, and I think that's always going to be a part of his game. Harrison's best routes are dig routes over the middle of the field. I'm telling you, I just got done charting Harrison. There's play after play after play where Marvin Harrison Jr. is open, and I just think Kyler Murray can't see him. So I don't know. We'll see. But let's toss to a break here. When we come back, we're going to talk through the top 12 teams in Scott's rankings, but the potentially best ecosystems in fantasy football this year, right after this. All right, Scott, we're back. Let's get to the top of these rankings here. I feel like some of these are going to be pretty short because, these teams are good. The players are good. Number 12, Los Angeles Rams. Number 11, Kansas City Chiefs. Number 10, Atlanta Falcons. Number 9, Buffalo Bills. Number 8, Minnesota Vikings. Number 7, Dallas Cowboys. Number 6, Baltimore Ravens. Number 5, San Francisco 49ers. Number 4, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Number 3, Cincinnati Bengals. Number 2, Philadelphia Eagles, and number 1, Detroit Lions. Producer Colin is literally in the outline right now, making bolding. He's increasing the font on Dallas. Received about a 7 to 9 slot bump in these rankings after the Pickens trade. No more Cowboys talk. We've talked enough about the damn Cowboys because they've made the only interesting move here in May. I'll tell you one team that stuck out to me right away. Actually, two teams for basically the same reason, Scott. Number 10, Atlanta Falcons. Number 8, Minnesota Vikings. We're counting a lot on 2 second-year quarterbacks to boost these two teams into the top 10. We saw a little bit of Michael Penix last year. In my opinion, some good, some bad. One really great week with Drake London that, I've been rewatching those, highlights of that film of the Week 18 game between those two in my private moments. Let's just say that. But Minnesota, J.J. McCarthy, we've never seen. And this is the 8th team in your rankings here, Scott.
Well, I've seen Kevin O'Connell make it work with so many different quarterbacks that I feel like he can make it work with anybody. McCarthy was a 5-star recruit out of high school, and he goes to a Michigan team. I know they won a championship, but it was a defense team. It was a ball control team. They did not ask McCarthy to air it out, throwing 20 to 25 passes a game. But both of these offenses, it's easy to tell yourself a story that Bijan Robinson is the number one running back for fantasy. He is my number one running back this year, as great as Barkley was last year, as great as Gibbs played at the end of the season. Bijan has been, it's not a hot take. I'm not trying to be, let my hair down and look at me. I have no problem making that pick over the other guys if I'm attacking a running back early, although I will take a lot of early receivers, as I know you always will as well. Atlanta, it's more of a leap of faith because the coaching infrastructure I don't feel as good about, and that's not necessarily a knock on them. It's just, there's not that many Kevin O'Connells to go around, but we like London. We like Darnell Mooney. We certainly like Bijan, and at least Penix, you can do some things that you couldn't do with Kirk Cousins. Just there's offense had a capped ceiling with Cousins, and there's literally plays you had to throw out, you had to throw in the trash because Cousins couldn't run them. And so at least you have the full playbook, you would think, theoretically at hand. I'm done making excuses for Kyle Pitts. He's well outside my top 10. I'm going to try not to draft him this year, and if he's great, he's great. But I'm going to want London. I'm going to want Bijan, and I think Penix will be good enough. I think McCarthy actually has more upside, and we'll see. He's off a major injury; he just hasn't played in so long. But you look at the pieces there are so much fun. I love a Kevin O'Connell offense, and everybody forgets they were the number one seed if they beat the Lions in Week 18. The number one seed.
Yeah.
The route to the Super Bowl goes through Minnesota, and then it's like everything gets wiped off the face of the earth because they played terrible that game, terrible against the Rams. We talked about that earlier. I would, if I were the Vikings, man, I would just give Kevin O'Connell a blank check and say, how do we sign you to a lifetime contract?
Yeah, I would be ready and willing to do that too. So yeah, to circle back on the Vikings, it really just is the JJ McCarthy question because everything else is so damn good here. So good. Ryan Kelly, Will Fries, Donovan Jackson hopefully, fingers crossed, obviously, fixing the interior of that offensive line, which Kevin O'Connell came out in the post-game presser when they lost in the wildcard round and said, we got to be better on the interior offensive line, period. And you know what? They attacked that with a lot of resources. They threw free agency dollars at it to get two of like the big-ass dudes from the Colts, Kelly and Fries, and then they doubled down on it by going with a first-round guard in Donovan Jackson, so who also has some tackle versatility too. Christian Darrisaw being back at left tackle, if he is healthy, because he missed the back half of last year, that's critical too. This could be one of the best offensive lines in the league if all of these guys hit. That's huge for JJ McCarthy, and the pass catchers are just like, it's an embarrassment of riches. Even adding Ty Felton in the third round, which a little earlier than I thought Ty Felton was going to go, but he could bring a dimension as like a run after catch player, which is different, and I think gives him something a little bit better than Jalen Naylor as a third receiver. I also love the addition of Jordan Mason as the running mate to Aaron Jones. I think there's going to be weeks where like we're on this podcast saying, hey, you probably won't put Jordan Mason in your starting lineup because Aaron Jones banged up, whatever. And even when both guys are out there, it's a good tandem. Atlanta, I kind of wish, I know they didn't have that many resources, didn't have a lot of cap money to throw around, did not have any draft picks at all. I think they had 5 picks. They obviously traded back up in the first round. Maybe they ended up making 6 because they traded back up for James Pierce. They had to fix that defense, of course, but I kind of wish they had like one more pass catcher in the mix. Like I don't really need to see Ray McLeod on this graphic here right now on the depth chart. Drake London though, Drake London could be one of the best receivers in football. I think it's going to be a little more high variance with Penix, but I'm okay leaning into that high variance there. So I don't have like problems with these rankings. I just think we're counting on these second year guys. One team that I think is worth talking about is number 5, San Francisco 49ers. Producer Colin was appalled at these rankings because he is a compromised source because he's a Cowboys homer and they hate the 49ers. But I liked it. I liked you having them at 5 here, Scott, because let me tell you what, George Kittle's still George Kittle. CMC is going to be, I mean, if he's obviously the health is the big factor, but he could be what? He could be he could be the running back 1 from a points per game basis, and 0.0 people would be surprised. And there's a right answer in this receiving room. There's a right answer in this receiving room here somewhere, whether it's Ayuk in the back half of the year, if he's coming back from injury, whether Jennings is a value pick, whether Pearsall really breaks out in year 2. Scott, Pearsall was awesome on film in the last 4 games. Awesome. Really, really impressed with him. So I'm okay with this is a regressive ranking from you with the 49ers, but I'm actually kind of sort of on board with it here.
Glad to hear that. Just one final bookmark on the Falcons. Another key second-year player for them is Zach Robinson, their offensive coordinator, who had some growing pains from the McVay tree. I think he'll be better this year as well. And look, they had to address that pass rush. That's why they drafted the way they did. They couldn't get to the quarterback in 3 weeks. So I get it would be nice if they had one more piece to add. But if Robinson takes a step forward, that would really help that offense. San Francisco, man, here's the thing. I have them ranked 5th. And that's with the throw up my hands. I don't know what to do. McCaffrey take. I'm afraid to draft him right now. I will not consider him in the first round. I will be nervous in the second round. I probably would draft younger, draft a little bit floor driven. Everybody's got upside in the top 2 rounds anyway. But even if McCaffrey doesn't pop, and Garendo is going to be a very buzzy, who's not starting now, who could be like a league tilter. He could be one of those guys. But at some point, Ayuk comes back. I really liked what Jennings did last year. As you said, we see the roots of a destructive player in Pearsall. And George Kittle, my friend Mike Salfino talks about this. He's just a cheat code at tight end. He's the one tight end, Matt. If I told you, some tight end just scored an 80-yard touchdown, you'd be like, it's George Kittle, right? I mean, he's unbelievable how he can get to the second and third level and how he can outrun guys. And he's going to be an attrition guy. He's going to block a lot. This is a team with a bad offensive line last year. I don't know how they could fix it overnight. Got to need Kittle as an extension of their offensive line. And Kittle's a guy, if you said to him, hey, George, we're going to go run heavy this week. You're going to basically run block 60 times in a row. He'd be cool. Let's do it. And he doesn't care. He doesn't care how much he catches the ball. You never heard George Kittle complain about targets or any of that stuff. But even in his age 32 season, I think it is, I'm usually not a vanity tight end guy. I'm willing to consider breaking the rules for Kittle because he goes that round and a half later than maybe the Bowers might go, or the guys that would break the seal at the position. Kittle won't do that, but I'm normally not building that way. I'm open-minded to it. But it's still Kyle Shanahan. I still think Brock Purdy is a plus quarterback. I mean, maybe he was over his skis as an MVP candidate a couple of years ago, but he understands. He knows. He's got Shanahan's voice in his head the whole time, and he knows where the ball needs to go. Now, at some point, his physical limitations will take over. He wasn't a first-round pick, obviously, but he did play at Iowa State, I think, for 4 years. Whenever the Niners have a bad season or a bad loss, it's always a referendum on, maybe Brock Purdy isn't that good. I think Brock Purdy is good, and I would be no problem hitching my wagon to him for the next decade. And again, I don't know what the running back room is going to look like. They have, I think, the best tight end in football. They have a very underrated, upside-driven receiver room, and we'll see when Ayuk comes back. Yeah, it's going to be a top 10 offense. Maybe 5's too high. Maybe they should have been 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever. But there's no way this can't be a top 10 offense. I strongly stand behind that take.
Yeah, it's just hard to put the teams that you have behind them ahead of him, in my opinion, because of the upside of that receiver room if somebody hits, and just what we know Kittle to be, all of those things. I want to just, before we talk about your number 1 ranked team here, because I don't think there's too much to say about Bucks, Bengals, Eagles. We know what those teams are. By the way, shout out to the Bucks for making it into the top 5. A good take by Scott Pianowski there, who knows ball. I want to just, before we talk about Lions, finish it out here, I want to just quickly hit on the Kansas City Chiefs at number 11. What's the right answer on this team? Do we just not care about the Chiefs in September, October? So therefore we probably don't really care about them in fantasy until they start trying in November, December, the big games, because what's the deal? I really don't know. I'm lukewarm on Rice and Worthy as players and as fantasy picks, but they're playing with the best quarterback on planet Earth in Patrick Mahomes. And hey, Scott, the backfield, bro. They're just running it back from last year, which I am stunned that is the case.
It's coming. A reckoning season is coming in Kansas City. Maybe it's not this year. Last year, they outkicked their win-loss record. When you look at point differential, you look at all the close games they won. They shouldn't have had the record they did. And some people say, well, that's Mahomes. That's Reed. They win the close ones. That stuff runs out. You can't live that way forever. And at some point, they're going to be a 9-8 team or an 8-9 team. And I'm telling you, if it's not this year, maybe next year. It's coming soon. Windows just don't stay open. The Patriots had that window. It stayed open, seemed like forever. The Chiefs have had this window with Mahomes and Reed. It feels like it's been open forever, and people are sick of the Chiefs being in the Super Bowl every year. Although, man, did they get absolutely demolished by the Eagles. What a beatdown that was from this first snap of the game. You can only somehow, MacGyver your way through this for a limited amount of time. Eventually, Kittle, mid-30s? They don't know when Rice is coming back. Worthy would make explosive plays, but he left plays on the field. As you said, very oddly, they're running it back. in the running back room. They've had offensive line issues for the last couple of years. Eventually, the pixie dust and Mahomes. Look, Mahomes and Reed, as great as they are, Mahomes has not been a great fantasy quarterback for the last couple of years. He was not at all one of the MVP candidates last year. He was just another good player, and I realize that speaks to the problems around him, but they didn't really fix it. My hot take: they're not going to win the division this year. I would not even be surprised if they missed the playoffs. There's a lot of problems with this team.
Oh my God. Okay. Well,
it's going to happen. And you know what? When they're great again and they go 13-4, it's going to be shoved in my face. I'm telling you, everybody in the NFL who observes it, who watches it, who analyzes it, I think people are going to be surprised that a lookout below Kansas City Chiefs season is not far away. Maybe it's not 2025. I'm telling you what, it's going to happen in the next 3 years. And I would not be surprised if it happened this year. When I say look up below, they're not going to go 2-15. But my point is, this idea that they're going to go 13-4 in perpetuity, that doesn't exist. They're going to have to pay the taxes due. It's coming.
I feel like we got to put a pin in this because that is worth a longer conversation. But it's so funny. I thought I was like, ooh, am I getting out of my skis here being like, I don't really want to draft any Chiefs in fantasy this year just because I think Mahomes has settled into I play football in a way that is conducive to winning games. It is not conducive to putting up stats. And I think this receiver room, it's not the same group that like we were complaining. Like it's not at the level of the group that we were complaining about like 2 years ago or whatever. It's fine, but Worthy needs role catering. Rice needs role catering. Hollywood Brown's just like an okay starting player. To me, it's not a needle moving receiver room. It's good.
Mahomes was quarterback 12 last year. Mahomes was a wrong answer.
So what I thought, I was like, oh man, am I getting a little aggressive saying like, I just don't even want to draft this team. And like, we'll talk about them in December when they're on the way to win the Super Bowl again. And Scott's like, no, they're not even gonna make the playoffs. So you took what I thought might've been like a little bit too hot of a take that I was saying. And you just dumped the cayenne pepper on it. So we will come back to this over the course of the offseason. But let's end this show with another team.
I got to say, they could miss the play. I'm not saying like if I had to bet my mortgage on whether or not they made the playoffs or not, I would obviously bet on them making it. But I would explore whatever the prop is on them missing it because I'm sure it would be plus odds. I would not at all be surprised if they missed the play. I am not saying, here it comes. I'm saying it's going to come soon. Maybe it's this year.
I mean, Scott's just not playing. He's not scared to compete. He's not playing scared because the rest of the media, me included, is too scared to go out and say like, no, actually the Chiefs like are going to have a season like that because they just haven't yet. You keep defaulting to history. But let me tell you what, I know for a fact to call myself out here. I just defaulted too much on history when talking about them in the Super Bowl this year in the lead up to the last season time. What is it? Defaulted too much.
I picked the Chiefs, and it was wrong the moment the game started. It was like, oh my God, I'm on the wrong side of this one.
It was so wrong, and I was right there with you. And it was just mostly because, hey, it's Pat Mahomes. They've been here before. They just didn't have the talent. Still some questions if they have the talent this year. I think it's worth asking. But again, let's wrap this show up with number 1, Detroit Lions. What if we're not giving enough credit to the fact that they lost Ben Johnson? Because I've talked about this a lot. I want to do a series, and we're going to do it in the offseason called Contrarian Corner. So I don't want to have a huge talk about this because this is actually going to be one of the subjects here. But nobody is drafting any Lions player as if the loss of Ben Johnson matters at all in fantasy. Nobody, because Jahmyr Gibbs is a first-round pick. David Montgomery is still like a top 20 running back, top 24 running back in rankings. Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 5, first round receiver for the most part, maybe early second round. Jameson Williams is wide receiver 27, kind of in that same range of like boom bust guys, but guys you want to draft. I don't know. What if we're not giving the Ben Johnson loss enough credit here, Scott? Like I said, I'm take shopping this. We're working it out. I want to have a whole episode talking about this as a contrarian corner thing, but they're the number 1 ranked team, and they just lost an offensive coordinator that we all like. We just said early in the season was one of Caleb Williams' best gifts of the offseason. Shouldn't this matter at least a little bit more to maybe dock them to, I don't know, team 4 or something?
Yeah, we're going to find out a lot about John Morton, the new OC, and that's obviously a huge part of this. I mean, is this a Canales Liam Cohen handoff? Probably not, because that'd be an unrealistic expectation. But the Lions are a great referendum on how much do coordinators matter, because they lose Johnson so highly regarded. They lose Glenn, who takes the Jets job and did a wonderful job of the defense that had everybody. The whole team photo was hurt in the second half of the year. People forget how dominant that defense was before just basically everybody started getting hurt, starting with Hutchinson, but it was really 8 or 9 guys. It was depressing to see it. And I feel like I wasn't even that depressed when they lost in the, as a adopted guy who fell in love with the Lions like everybody here has done. I thought they were probably going to lose to the Eagles the way they were constituted. So that loss, that beatdown loss that they took, it's like, well, I think this team probably had a ceiling because just too many players were missing. But at the end of the day, maybe it's just too much talent for it to fail. And there's the expression that I have a veteran quarterback who's a star. Jared Goff is a star. He's not an MVP, but he's like, he can make a Pro Bowl front door before everybody starts opting out of the game. He's like, he can be a top 5, top 8, top 10 quarterback. And when you have a tenured player like that on your offense, he's basically part of the offensive coordinator. He's calling the plays. What is he comfortable with? He's as much of that as Morton may be, because it's going to be about getting Goff comfortable. And he has players who threaten all the strata of the field, all the stuff that St. Brown does. I know Williams can be a frustrating player because he makes a lot of mental mistakes, and he makes, I don't think the Lions are in love with him long term. I would never be surprised if they traded him. I thought it could have even happened this spring because he's kind of a maddening player at times, but of course he scares defenses. He takes the top off defenses. He can take any drag route 70 yards as well. Laporte is a great player off a down season. They didn't need him to do that much. I just don't see how you go wrong with all the talent here. What the player that Gibbs became when they steered into him after Montgomery got hurt. Montgomery's still a solid player, and I can't believe it's taken us this long to get to it. They have the best offensive line in football. So I don't know how Morton can screw this up. I don't know how Goff can screw this up. Maybe it's a tough division, so maybe they step back and they become a high-scoring 9-8 team, a high-scoring 10-7 team. But I think for fantasy, it's still an extremely fun and extremely safe place to park your investment.
Very fair. Like I said, I want to talk through this a little bit more in an episode later this summer, but hard to argue with anything Scott said there. And by the way, we didn't even say the name Dan Campbell in terms of he's a very underrated piece in the offensive construction, that whole process. He was calling the plays after they fired Anthony Lynn in his first season on the
people
job.
Forget he's an offensive guy because he's such a hands-on guy, and he's such an energy guy. I mean, he was a tight end coach. He was a tight end in the NFL, right? I mean, he's an offensive guy. Those are his NFL roots.
It's a great point. So again, we'll talk more about this throughout the course of the summer. Scott, that was awesome. We could have done this for 3 more hours and hit on all these teams. I love this exercise with you every season. I love this article that you consistently update over the course of both the off season and then into the season. Tell the people what else you're working on right now that they could check out.
For sure. Yeah. A lot of baseball content, a lot of football content, because we're going to juggle both of them. As you mentioned, Discord's coming. I'm thrilled to be part of that. Next week for baseball, I'm sure I'll be doing some Discord football down the road. So I hope everybody checks that out. And follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky, whatever your preference is there. And we're not far away, man. We're going to be drafting. It's almost here for Yahoo Fantasy. So I just can't wait to get this season going. I'm excited. Let's get Pittsburgh situated. Let's get that solved. And then let's start, getting our rosters filled. It's going to be a really fun season.
It is right around the corner. It's frighteningly, alarmingly right around the corners, but I'm very excited for it. Very excited for everything we got coming on the podcast here over the next few months. For now, that is going to do it for today's show. Shout out to all you who watched, joined, listened, the whole deal. Andy Behrens is going to join me for a live schedule reaction show bright and early Thursday morning. Yes, Andy was just,
love it live.
Andy was itching, Scott. He was like, oh, we're doing a live. He was like, we're doing a live schedule show. We're going to do it at 10 a.m. Eastern on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Mm-hmm. He was just begging for, I was like, Andy,
he needs it.
He needs it, man. Nobody.
Well, you know why he needs it, Matt? I'm going to throw some NBA at you. Chicago's in mourning because they didn't get the number 1 pick in the draft lottery. That Cooper Flagg is going to be the next great NBA player. He's the obvious number 1 pick, and Chicago was thinking that's going to be us. And instead, Cooper Flagg looks like he's ticketed, the great Duke star out of Maine. He's ticketed for the Dallas Mavericks. So Chicago, they haven't rebuilt the hockey team. They got problems in basketball. They're all chips are in on this Chicago Bears team.
Yeah, and look, when has Bears won the offseason? Let's see what their schedule looks like. When has that ever gone wrong before? So,
right, famous offseason champions, right? Yeah,
exactly. So, this is Andy Behrens' season. Nobody loves the schedule release more than Andy Behrens. He's jacked up about it. So he's like, hey, Harmon, we are doing a live show, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Demanded it.
He demanded
Live.
it early Thursday morning.
Yep.
Again, it's going to be live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Be sure to tune in because that is going to be our last live show for a minute. So I will see you all then. You will see Andy Behrens. You will see me. Again, a bright and happy Andy Behrens just talking about how many primetime Bears games we've got to watch this year. But until then, we are out.